Hello, welcome to the Cunning Plan podcast. I'm James Adam.
I'm Simon Myatt.
Hi Simon, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. It's my birthday today.
Simon's birthday. He is
Not very old.
24.
Maybe 6 years, maybe 12 years ago.
Okay, there or thereabouts anyway.
Yeah.
What are you planning to be up to today?
Just a nice sort of family meal tonight, and then off on holiday tomorrow. So
Holiday tomorrow. That's pretty good, isn't it?
yeah, it is. Very much looking forward to it.
Very nice too. So we're going to squeeze in one more podcast before
absolutely.
You abscond for a couple of weeks and talk about preparation and planning and how to make the most out of your meetings.
Absolutely.
Meeting etiquette. So that's going to be pretty interesting. Hopefully you have prepared well for your trip away. Otherwise there'll be all sorts of mischief going on whilst you're...
Absolutely.
So, well, this is the Cunning Man podcast. Every week we run through all sorts of different things in the world of marketing, tips and advice and all manner of wonderful curiosities. And like I said, today it's all about meeting etiquette. So, where should we start? Like, meetings, we're pretty obsessed with meetings these days. It's like everybody, let's have a meeting to talk about this, or a quick sit down about that.
Yeah, I think when you're planning a meeting, the most important part really is preparation. So you must make sure that the purpose of the meeting is outlined, that you have a clear agenda that's sent through to everybody in good time. If there's documentation that needs to be read, it's always much better to send that before a meeting so people can read through it, can understand and come with their own viewpoints and opinions. So that when you actually come to the meeting, people know what they want to say, and they've got the background behind it as well. So I think that's really important.
It does feel to me like a lot of the time with a meeting, it's like the purpose of the meeting is to force everyone to take the time to do something.
Yes.
So you say, well, let's have a meeting to talk this through, and then you have a meeting, and then everyone spends that the first 15 minutes of that meeting explaining or trying to understand the thing that you're there to talk about.
Absolutely, yeah.
Which is just completely the wrong reason to have a meeting, isn't it?
It is indeed, yeah. As a creative agency, we have a lot of brainstorms, and I think it's really important to fill people in on the background, give them documentation so that they can go away before the meeting and have a think about what they'd like to do, creative ideas, they can look for inspiration, so that when they come to that meeting, they've already got a good feel for what's in their head. And then rather than trying to generate just straight away ideas in that meeting, we've already got ideas that we can then build upon and use that time sort of more efficiently. But, in sort of client meetings, I think it's more important for us as an agency to really drive those meetings, to make sure that we get everything out of those meetings that we need to. So I think that's why, from my background working in agencies, we always tend to write the agendas, we tend to sort of drive the meetings just to make sure we get out of it what we need to.
So what sort of tips in order to get people to be more prepared for a meeting, what kind of things can people do to ensure that when you get in that meeting, you can keep it tight, nice and short? And
I typically look at the meeting duration. So let's say it's an hour long. What I then do is I'll look at the topics on the agenda that we need to cover, and then I try and sort of segment them into 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 15 minutes, so that as we're going through the meeting, I can be aware that this section has 15 minutes. If we're approaching 15 minutes, let's start wrapping it up and moving on, and sort of collating the final sort of feedback from that. So that's my main tip for that. I think it's really important as well that when you're in these meetings, especially from an agency point of view, we dedicate somebody within a representative of our team to take notes. And I think that's really important because we want to be engaged with the people in that meeting, but we want somebody there to make sure that everything's captured, that was said, that was important.
Yeah, and that's difficult because sometimes you've got, if more than one person is taking notes, then everyone's sitting there scribbling around and not completely. And I, personally, I write things down to help me remember them. I might never refer back to those pieces of paper again, but because the very act of writing it down sort of makes it go into my head. So I always take notes all the time, but I'm always expecting that someone else is also capturing the kind of full breadth of the meeting.
I think that's it. I think you give somebody a responsibility to take those notes. And I think what we should do is, as a team, if there's something that I think, well, that's important, I'll make sure I write it down just in case the person writing notes is missing it because they're writing up the last thing said or something like that. So I think it's always good for us to take little bits of notes along with the main note taker, because then we can send our notes onto that main note taker after the meeting, and they can collate everything to make sure everything was covered. And my advice always with that is, we write that out in a bit of a narrative. So here's what was said, and then really the most important thing is the key actions that come out of that. So we discussed this. Okay, what we're going to do about this? Well, I think they should go away and do this. I think we should go away and do that. And it's just making sure that those actions are captured. And then another bit of advice I would say is, assign those actions to a certain person, but also try and give it a time frame. So expected delivery time is Friday next week, depending on the task. So just to make sure it's delivered by somebody, so somebody's got responsibility to make sure that task gets done, and they know a time when they need to do it for as well.
Yeah, and kind of going back to what you said at the start, which is really about the planning and the purpose for the meeting.
Yes.
Which really leads into those action points, isn't it? My view is you don't always have to have an agenda for a meeting. A meeting sometimes it's not possible to get an agenda there.
Yeah.
But it's always possible to have a purpose for the meeting. It's always possible to say, out of this meeting, we want to achieve this thing.
Yes.
And if we come out of that meeting and we haven't achieved that thing,
yeah,
it was a pointless exercise.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going because we want to get sign off on this thing. We're going because we want to, generate more ideas about this subject or whatever else.
Yeah.
So at least you can get that, and then at the end you can go, right, this was the purpose, and as you say when you write the notes, this was the purpose. This is what we talked about, and these are the actions. And that results in what I think is a positive.
Absolutely, and I always think it's good before a meeting to, write down any questions that I might have in my head, because if I get to the meeting, I might forget those questions. So I think that's important. I think also it's good to, especially from an agency when we're seeing clients, because it's hard sometimes to get in front of clients. I think it's good for us to have, a bit of a pre-meeting where we discuss things, we make sure that we're both aligned on the agenda for the meeting and what we're trying to get out of it, and that will then help form the basis of any questions we might want to ask, and then we can include that. I might write it down on a pad and take it with me, and just make sure I'll have it in my head, but just make sure, because I've got it written down, that I will say those questions, and then we'll get an answer for those questions, and we can move things forward.
And I think other really simple tips for before the meeting, just using your calendar invites, those kind of things. It seems like real basic stuff, but that's those calendar invites are a place you can store where the location of the meeting is going to be. How many times have we had a meeting where we've gone to one place? We've had this before. We're over at the client's office. The client's here. Some confusion, not our fault. The person's in the wrong place. It happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
If it's all in there, it's all well documented. There's never any confusion.
Yeah.
The purpose of the meeting again can be in there. All that kind of stuff is there, and no one's got any excuses for saying, they forgot about the meeting. Or
definitely, I completely agree. I think we use Google Calendars, which I think is a great tool, to send all the meeting invites, and I always follow up with if we do, even if it's quite an informal meeting, just a general chat over a coffee, even I'll always send a meeting invite to, just like you say, state the location, state the time. And for me, that's a really helpful tool, because every day I fire up my calendar, have a quick look to see what my day entails, see what meetings I've got, see who I'm seeing, what time, and then that helps me plan my day as well. But it also makes sure that I don't forget meetings or I don't mistake the location of that meeting.
Cool. So right, we're well prepared. Everyone in the meeting knows what the meeting's for.
Yeah.
What about the invitees? Do we just how do we make sure that the right people are in that meeting and it's not just full of room meat?
Well, yeah, I think, normally from our point of view, the conversations leading up to sending the meeting invite, we will consider who we want to attend, and the person, you say, if it's our clients, they will probably think, okay, the person I'm speaking to organise a meeting will think, they need to be in this meeting, and they need to be in this meeting as well. So, I think really it'd be our responsibility to make sure the right personnel from the agencies are, and, the client will make sure that from their side, they're relevant stakeholders or the personnel from their business are there as well.
Okay. So everyone's there. We're in the meeting. We've seen some pretty crazy ways of behaving.
Meeting etiquette, yeah.
Meeting etiquette. This is a real. I know this is a good old bugbear of yours.
Yes, it is.
And how people behave when you're in the meeting itself.
Absolutely.
So give me some examples of some of the things that get your goat.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for me, it's really a basic, and I almost feel a little bit daft for saying it, but for me, when you're in a meeting, you need to pay attention. And I think in the modern day, as we get dependent on our phones and electronic devices, And, you know, just the way in general people deal with each other. You see, you know, when people are having meals, people are just looking at the phones, not speaking to each other. And, you know, it's a little bit tragic in a lot of ways, but the problem is I think this has spilled out into actual like client meetings or just, you know, general meetings in business worlds. So it's what I find really frustrating is somebody can be speaking to the room, they're addressing the room, and it's really important you're paying attention, because there's no point you being in that meeting if you're not going to pay attention, you're not going to listen to what's being said, you're not going to add value. And I've seen a lot of people in meetings, and this has happened, you know, this isn't just a recent thing, this has happened for many years, where people will be on laptops, typing away, working through their to-do list. And, you know, that was really, for me, the first instance where I've been in meetings where I've seen people not paying attention and doing other things.
I think that's when it really started, was when you, when people had laptops, and you took a laptop to the meeting, because you take notes on your laptop instead of writing those notes. And, you know, there was a went when that wasn't the case. You came with a pen and paper and you were writing notes. You couldn't really do anything else. That's what you were doing. And I think with the way that everything's so interconnected now, when you do that and you go into the meeting, you know, I've been in a meeting where I am taking notes on my computer.
Yes.
And irrespective of what I've done, I shut everything down, but there's still notifications are coming in.
Yeah.
And you have to be the most focused person in the world to not go, oh crikey, I'll just quickly answer that whilst that person's talking about something I'm not super interested in. So I'll just fire that off. And then, you know it's happening when you look around the table and you suddenly hear a whoosh.
Yes, exactly.
Hang on a minute, they just sent an email. And that's no good. But it is, and that's why I generally say, if it's my meeting, no laptops. You're taking notes on a piece of paper and writing up later.
I mean, I'm all for technology, you know, if it's supporting the content or the speaker. You know, I think, you know, visual aids and technology can be a real positive thing in meetings. But I think people have just got too much of a dependency for checking phones and laptops and working away. You know, I sort of talk about millennials, and they were the sort of really, for me, the first generation where you saw in meetings that they would just be, somebody would be speaking and they'd just be head down doing stuff, and then they'd be asked a question like, oh sorry, what was that? And, you know, they weren't paying attention, and I find it incredibly rude. I would never operate that way, and I don't know why these people operate in that way. I think to me, it's almost like, oh, they've been invited to the meeting, that they don't feel they've got time to attend because they've got too much on, or they feel begrudgingly, you know, they're begrudgingly there. So they're sort of like,
sometimes it's not even that. Sometimes it's because, and this does happen, certainly it doesn't happen here, but it certainly does happen, where people bring people to meetings to just have more people in the meeting.
Yeah.
So if, you know, and I've been in those meetings in other places before, where I'm in the meeting and I'm like, I have nothing to contribute in here. I'm not really even supposed to be talking in this meeting.
Yeah.
I have got a load of other stuff I could be doing.
Yeah.
And that goes back to, like, if everyone in that room doesn't need to be there,
then they shouldn't be there.
And that was something someone said to me once, is that if a meeting can happen without you in it, or if you not being in that meeting means, you know, that meeting could just carry on anyway, then you're not. You shouldn't be in a meeting, and you're not important enough.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, that is a problem. But, you know, my thoughts are, if even if you're in that meeting and you think my time could be spent elsewhere or doing other things, I still think you're distracting from it, and it's rude when somebody else is speaking to be down tapping away.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Yeah.
But, you know, the working on a laptop, you know, some people might argue, well, you know, they're multitasking, they're listening, they're working, they're doing this two things at once. For me, it's rude, but, you know, okay, that's a slight degree of rudeness. But what I've seen, especially from Generation Z, and I think it's probably because they're the people who've grown up using smartphones and don't really know, or don't really have the boundaries as to when to use them and when not to use them. But I've been in meetings with, you know, typically people from Generation Z, where they are just sending messages. I've seen people sending Snapchats. I've seen people actually taking selfies. Yeah, honestly, I saw one girl send a selfie during a meeting, and she was smiling like this, and I was thinking, oh, are you doing that for your social media? She's like, oh no, I'm just sending it to my mum. And I was, you know, I'm just thinking, like, somebody's presenting something here, and she should be contributing, listening, being attentive, and taking pictures and sending it to her mum.
That's crazy.
And it's just, you know, unfortunately, I read a statistic that, you know, on average we check our phones every 12 minutes these days. You know, and, you know, when I'm at home, I'm always looking at my phone, checking messages, you know, looking at social media. I think a lot of people are guilty of checking the phones far too frequently.
Well, actually, I I watched this thing called Twinstitute.
Yes.
And they did a test where they had people. They did the test to see whether smartphones make you dumber. So they had a set of twins doing a test with a mobile phone sitting on their desk beside them, and then another set of twins doing a test where the phone was just, they'd got rid of it earlier in the day. It just wasn't there. They couldn't touch the phone during the test. It was just there, so they knew it was there. And they performed worse just because they knew the phone was there, just because they were like aware of it, kind of wondering what was happening on it and all this kind of stuff. And it's true, it's like it does distract you. It just is there sort of saying, hey, come and check what's going on and all this kind of stuff.
Absolutely. But I find that astounding, and maybe it is because I sort of come from an agency background. That's always what I've done in my professional career, and I always think to myself, maybe it's because when we're in meetings, we're always sort of been trained and taught to make sure that we're giving great client service, because we're there representing our agency. We're making sure that we make the client feel vested in, that we're vested in them and their campaign and their business. So I think that's probably an inbuilt thing, to always be really attentive and make sure that they think that my behaviour is very good. So I think maybe it's when it's the flip side and they treat us as, because we're a supplier, we're their agency. I think sometimes people are like, oh well, I employ them, sort of thing, so I can just behave how I like. And maybe that is sort of why I have such a bugbear on it, because I think I would never do that.
No, yeah.
But I always think to myself, on the flip side, if I was dealing with a supplier, I wouldn't be sat there checking my phone and writing emails and sort of half listening to what they had to say. So I think everybody should behave in the right way.
I think that to present a kind of counterpoint there, I suppose. I was in a meeting the other day with somebody, and it was I was actually in I'm on my village fate committee, so the average age of this group of people is 70 plus, and they got somebody new came in, and they were going to be doing some work and doing some other bits and pieces, and they were obviously taking notes on their phone, and so they were sitting there tapping away, taking notes on their phone, and I could tell that's what they were doing, and after this person left, they were furious, this group, because they were just like, she was just sitting there just sending text messages or just messing about on her phone. That's all she was doing, was sending messages. I'm like, no, I think she was taking notes on her phone. I think that's it. And I think that's what some people would argue, that's what, my phone is my primary note-taking device. I have that and I'm taking this. But for me, it's just a perception thing. I would say no, don't use your phone to take notes, because it looks like you're doing something else.
My thought on that is just communicate, and this is my biggest thing. If somebody said at the start of a meeting or something, I'm really sorry, I've got some really urgent work, I just need to work on my laptop, I'll try and be as quiet as I can, and I apologise for the inconvenience. At least they've acknowledged it. And the same with this lady, if she was taking notes on her phone, if it was me doing that, to make sure nobody had that bad perception of me being rude, I'd be like, everybody, I'm just going to be taking notes on my phone. I hope you don't mind. I'm not being rude. I just want to make sure I'm capturing things, and this is the way I like to do it.
But I think there's a group of people that for whom that's just how you take notes. So therefore don't even consider that it could be construed.
But I suppose you've got to, because phones are not just work devices, are they? They're leisure and
I think the other thing is you've got to appreciate, and this sort of drifts into like how you good account management and having good relationships with other people, is that not everyone is exactly the same age as you and has the exact same background as you, so therefore if you think that's okay, that doesn't mean that the person sitting opposite you thinks it's okay. So like you said, you have to communicate, that sort of thing, I suppose.
It's just I think my worrying perception on all this is it just seems to be getting worse as time goes by. And like that young woman I referenced before, taking the selfie in the meeting, and she was on her phone quite a lot. And
I feel like that's a pretty extreme example. I've
seen other individuals, look at the phone and like laughing to themselves.
That sort of things,
I've seen little subtle things that you just know that they're just doing personal messages or doing things that aren't relevant to the meeting. And I think I was looking at it thinking, oh my God, their boss is sat there and they can see them doing this. Get in so much trouble, and I'm just waiting for it to happen, and it just doesn't. And it just seems to be more.
Maybe it does later.
Yeah, maybe
when they get home.
But it does seem to be more and more universally accepted, as if this is just what people do. Oh yeah, that's my phone. I use it in a meeting. I'll just check things. I get messages. I'll have a quick look at it. I'll put it down and carry on. And I do think that that's a worrying thing, that that people just are more accepting and more tolerant of this kind of behaviour. So I think it might just get worse. That's the problem.
I think something that we do here is the Lego Serious Play.
Yes,
stuff that we offer, and I think that is a great way of completely changing the way that a meeting works.
Yeah.
And it works for any type of meeting. We use it a lot for brainstorms and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But it's a great facilitation process and things like that, because you're not allowed any paper.
Yeah.
So the paper goes to one side. You can't write notes. You certainly can't have a laptop or a phone in nearby.
Yeah.
So you are working with the Lego bricks in front of you, and the thing, and your thoughts and your ability to articulate those thoughts.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And everybody, and it guarantees 100% participation. So if you're in that room, you have something to contribute.
Yeah.
And you will be, you will have to contribute to that meeting.
Yeah.
And I've seen such an improvement in the quality of the output of meetings. They take longer because everyone's getting involved and everyone's sharing and contributing and everything like that. But the result is you get so much deeper understanding of a problem or something like that. But again, you need to have a really good preparation for that meeting, or you can't, or you just amble about for hours and hours. But I think there's other techniques like that you can use to sort of upend the traditional, let's all sit here, talk about a thing, someone takes notes, and the stuff you're talking about is how they take those notes or what else they do. And I think that's fundamentally the problem, is that if somebody can be disengaged from a meeting, then I would argue your meeting is not very good. Your meeting isn't. You haven't got the right people, and the content of your meeting is not interesting.
I mean, we've all been in those meetings, haven't we? Where the presentation is very underwhelming. It's very lengthy. You can see like slide 1 of 104, and the first slides took 5 minutes. You think, oh, how much longer is this going to take? Yeah, so I do think the onus is on the presenter and the person who's running the meeting to make sure that it is engaging, it is interesting, it is in some ways exciting, because I think if you do that, you will get more out of the people, because as you just said, if you give them creative stimulus to work with, then it definitely does get more out of people. So Lego Serious Play is a great example of that kind of thing.
What about after the meeting? So you've prepared well for your meeting, you've had a great meeting.
Yeah.
What comes next?
Yeah, I think it's really important that very soon after that meeting, I'm talking, unless it's the very end of the day, the same day, getting back, writing up your notes, making sure, because it's all fresh in your mind. If you leave it even 24 hours to then write up your notes, you might be like, oh, what did we talk about there, or who said this? So I think the most important thing is writing up your notes, and making sure that whoever's took the notes, everybody else shares their notes with them, so that they've got that to write up in a concise format. And like we talked about before, narrative, and then key point is actions. So it's just making sure that those actions are clearly documented and sent around to everybody as well. So send them around to the clients, to the suppliers, to the agency, everybody who's involved in the meeting, and making sure that we've assigned responsibility to each of those tasks and the time frame.
And I went to a lecture with the gentleman whose name now escapes me, who wrote the Productivity Ninja.
Yeah.
I'll put a link in the description. But and this was really interesting, and his whole point was that only a fifth of your time should be spent in meetings.
Yeah.
Because for every meeting you need to spend the other time either preparing for a meeting or doing the things that the meeting told you to do. So basically, if you had a day of meetings on a Wednesday, you shouldn't have any more meetings that week.
Yeah.
Because you can't physically do all the things that you have to. If you have a week where you're just back-to-back meetings, you shouldn't have another meeting for that month, because you couldn't have prepared for them properly, and you couldn't deliver on everything that you were supposed to do.
Totally agree.
And so I think that's when you have these places where you've got meetings back to back, meeting, you're thinking, what? You're not. That is a toxic environment.
Yeah.
And it's not. It's just not conducive to getting.
Absolutely not. And I've read a book on essentialism as well, which is the basis of that is this meeting essential? Do we need to have it? If the answer is no, then don't have it.
Yeah. So we've got prepare for the meeting.
Yeah.
Make sure it's got a purpose.
Yeah.
Only invite the people that really need to be there.
Yeah.
When you're in the meeting, put your phone away.
Yes.
Take a bit of paper.
Yeah.
Bring a bit of paper along. Make notes on that.
Yeah.
If you have to use a laptop, make it really clear you're making notes on that laptop.
Yes, yeah.
It does save time sometimes. You not in a meeting with me though.
Yeah.
But that's really, get rid of all the other stuff that can potentially distract you from focusing. But if you're running the meeting and it's your meeting, make sure it's a good meeting. Make sure it's well planned. Make sure it's interesting. Make sure it engages everybody.
Absolutely.
Use techniques that that are out there to help engage with us.
Absolutely.
And do more of that stuff, and then afterwards, write your notes.
Yeah, it's like they say, isn't it? Fail to prepare, prepare to fail.
Absolutely. And then crack on and do some flipping work.
Yes,
That's the,
exactly.
number one priority. Actually do the things that you had. Don't just go to the meeting and then come back a month later and go, anyway, here are the actions from last meeting. We didn't have the time to do any of the work because we were doing too many meetings.
It's madness.
Madness. Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for joining.
Hope you have a very nice holiday.
Thank you very much.
We will be back again next week with another podcast about something or other. It'll be no doubt fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Thank you.
Until next time.